Uh, so today we have Marcus DiBernardo on with us for a webinar. So this webinar is brought to you by Evolve. Evolve is a new coach education platform designed to support the future development of grassroots coaching and thus development of players over the world. Educate, evolve, excel. The 170-page coaching Bible is now available. Please visit our website, www.evolvethecoach.com. Our social media is Facebook is Evolve Coaching, Instagram and Twitter or X is at Evolve the Coach. Today we have a member-only webinar with Marcus DiBernardo, consultant to MLS and MLS teams, skill acquisition and director of methodology specialist, club soccer coaching provider, as well as owning his own company. Marcus is an unbelievable guest on our platform. Marcus will present on his own training methodology, but also provide key information on how it applies to your own coaching setting. So thank you, Marcus. Without further ado, if you'd like to share a screen and we can get this going.
Awesome. Let me try to do this here without screwing it up. Let me look for this. Hold on one second. I told you this was going to be hard for me. I gotta find this. Hold on. Let me see if I can drop this in here. Hold on. Oh, I think I know what I got to do here. Hold on. Hold yeah. Hold on one second.
You good? It's a good thing with technology that people can, go fast forward a minute and then we get your presentation,
Crazy. Yeah, I'm looking how to get this. How to share this. Man.
The green button at the bottom and then it should let you
yeah, because I had to open this thing, right? But then I hit share. So let me find out where you are.
You good?
Let me try this again. I got to cancel the screen share and start again. All right. Let me see if this comes on. I may have to. I think I got it.
Hey, here we go. Yep, you definitely do.
So you can see this now.
I can.
Okay. All right. So let's start off here with, first of all, my journey a little bit, who I am and how I started into all this. So back in the day, I when I was a college player, I was really still interested, even at that young age of 18 years old, of coaching. So I started off with the Tony Waiters 3v3 micro soccer books, and I literally wrote down every training session I had in college, and I started coaching at 18 years old in our local club. And from there, I trained myself in my backyard in a black and white picture book with the Corver method, right? Back in the day, we didn't have the internet and all these things. We didn't have YouTube. So I started teaching myself technique through rote training, actually. So through the years, as I continued to coach, I continued to read. And about 10 years ago, maybe a little more, I stumbled onto academic theory. And I started looking at the guy from Belgium, Brulinek, and really taking a look at how he took a cognitive processing theory and made it into this soccer methodology. And I thought that was very interesting. So that's kind of how I started my journey. And then eventually what I'm going to talk to you today really is where I am now, about connecting academic theory to training session design, and how I made my own methodology over the last 30 plus years of my coaching, how I came to that, how I came to my own methodology. So what is a methodology in particular? Now, one of the things that people always say is, hey, I got to a club and they have a curriculum. And for me, a curriculum is just a list of topics. And those are topics that you would cover, say, for the year or whatever, in no particular order. So for me, a methodology is a way of teaching. It's not a list of topics. It's a way of teaching the game in a progressive manner throughout the age groups. So when you go to a soccer club, if you're doing the 4v4 U8 game model and you're going to the 7v7 game model the next year, do you have a methodology that takes you progressively from 4v4, transitions you into 7v7, and then to 9v9 and 11v11? That's what I would look for in a club. And Victor Frade was, this maybe doesn't apply to the youth level, but he made his own methodology that every pro coach almost around the world used, which is called tactical periodization. It's a very, very well thought out methodology. He's a brilliant guy who teaches out of a university in Portugal. I like a lot of things from tactical periodization, but I don't subscribe to it for a number of reasons. I subscribe to aspects of it. But again, this is an example of what a methodology is. So I start my methodology with a academic theory. So you had the cognitive processing theory under Miller, which is, and I'll give you kind of an example what that is. It's in decision making, it's A plus B. And then based upon A and B, you're going to take action C. It relies on pattern recognition. It relies on past memory and pulling things out that you recognize from past memory. I don't subscribe to that anymore. That used to be something that intrigued me. I don't subscribe to that. I subscribe to Gibson's theory on ecological dynamics. And basically what ecological dynamics is it's a current feedback loop. Like the athlete is in a current feedback loop in the moment. So when it comes to decision making, they are not relying on past memories. They are not saying A plus B equals action C. They are free to change intentions at will. It's very, very quick where they're not doing a mathematical computation in their mind. So I could go into it much more than that, but what ecological dynamics really operates on is the reflection of light. So everything reflects light. That's how we see, right? And that's how we pick up movement. So in this example, the soccer ball is whizzing at this poor guy's head, right? And as the ball gets quicker, as the ball gets closer to him, the reflection of light gets larger. And you could tell the speed by the rate of change of the reflection of light, how it gets bigger and faster as it gets towards his head. Now, here's the part that really means a lot in ecological dynamics. He does not have to be trained to move his head. He can couple his physical action to the light coming, the real information at his head with that ball. So that's like an innate action. We can all move our head. We don't have to practice that, right? So that's the coupling of physical actions to real information. Now let's look at that in a soccer context. When a goalie dives for the ball, the reflection of light coming off that ball tells the goalie the speed, direction of the ball as they couple their dive, their physical actions to that real information. That for me is very, very important. Now, the environment has everything in it that the athlete needs to make these real-time decisions. Now, I always give an example of a mountain climber, right? Yes, the information in the environment is information rich, but the athlete, the top athletes know where to look for the information. So if you're a mountain climber and you're going to climb this mountain and you have great hand grip strength, you're going to perceive that mountain for grip strength. Where are the handholds on that mountain? If I put a pair of mittens on you, you are going to perceive it's the same mountain, but your visual perception is different now. You're going to look for footholds. It's the same mountain, but you're going to look for footholds. Your vision is now attuned to something different. As we get into small-sided games, as we get into a soccer context, this is about attuning their visual perception to different information, because visual perception leads to physical actions. We're talking about the process of decision making here. And this goes from grassroots 4v4 all the way up to 11v11. So We kind of went through that. I'm going to skip a little bit here. Like, so there is something called a knowledge base, and this is pretty important to understand. As you become more experienced and you play, and we could talk about Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours, right? And I talk about my kids from Red Bull all the time. My kids from Red Bull Brazil, they at 5 years old, they're in the street. They're playing pickup street soccer because A, the environment, their parents know that it's a safe place for them to be. The neighborhood looks after the kids. The kids say they didn't have internet, they didn't have video games. This is what they did. They're in an immersive culture about soccer. Their uncles played it, their brothers, their mothers, they see it on TV. That's 14,000 hours of street soccer that they get before they enter the pro club at 14 years old. That all goes into this cup that we'll call a knowledge base, right? However, here's why I say you're not drawing on past memories. When you're on the field, you don't have to go into your memory and say, I can't pick this ball up and throw it in the goal with my hands. It's already part of your knowledge base. This is important to understand. Then I went over what attunement was with you. Now, for me, I know I'm going to kind of jump around these slides, but for me, I get into these long arguments with, let's call them conversations about coaching licensing and coaching professional development and all this. I do not believe in the principles of play. And even though I connect academic theory to training session design to principles of play, my definition of principles of play are much different than a coach's. And I always give the same story, and I could use a different player anytime I want. But Giovinco at Toronto FC was the best player in the MLS when he was there. He came over speaking zero English. I sat in a course seminar with Toronto FC, one of their coaches, who went over the 16 attacking principles of play and the 15 defensive principles of play unique to Toronto FC. Those principles of play mean absolutely nothing. When Giovinco is dribbling down the field, doesn't even speak English, he is not going into his past memory saying, hey, our number 14 principle of play here at Toronto FC is to play it wide. When that's not how it works. That's for the coaches. That's for licensing programs who want you to spend $10,000 to get a pro license. That's what they need to make those courses useful. So they need to put this type of stuff in there, in my opinion. So what this is, soccer comes down to two things. When you have the ball, can you exploit space and time to score a goal? If you're in front of the goal, you're going to score. That's your number one option. And we're going to talk about what these options are. They're called affordances. If you are defending, your number one option, what your goal is to shut down space and time so the other team can't score. So here's my point. If it's about exploiting space and time to score goals, do I have to say, hey guys, the principle of width, switch the ball wide? No, you know what I need to do? I need to attune that player's visual perception to different options. I need to change their visual perception to couple their physical actions to maybe different solution. And when players search for information in the environment, they're actually searching for opportunities for action. So, and these things don't have to be talked about, by the way, because I'm going to continue with the slides, but verbal instruction, and this, listen, I'm telling you right now, if this is a grassroots group that I'm speaking to, especially at the grassroots level, verbal instructions means almost nothing. And I will say this, the questioning method. I just went through some courses for US Soccer, and the questioning method was the main method for these courses. I disagree with the questioning method 1,000%. And here's why. And everyone, no, listen, it's just my opinion. People always, my opinions do not go with what is accepted beliefs out there. And I catch a lot of feedback in the other direction from this, and which I'm prepared to accept because I have a reason behind what I'm saying. When I bring a group of kids in and say, what do you do when you get the ball? Spread out. What do you do when you lose the ball? Come together. Okay, it's great. That's all verbal, right? They're giving me the right answers. It means nothing. They don't do it. And they're never going to do it. It means nothing. And there's not enough physical stimulus, mental stimulus in words to really affect actions in a dynamic game like soccer. So how do you do it? Listen, what if I'm coaching 4v4, right? And I make 3 lanes, middle lane, right lane, left lane. And I have 4 kids on the sideline and 2 defenders. When I roll the ball out, the center back and center mid have to occupy the center lane. The right back and left back. And I'm just giving these, you could say wingers. It's a 4v4. I mean, I'm just giving them labels. So now you have a diamond. You have center back, midfielder, right back, left back. You don't have to say a word. All you did was say, run to your lanes when you rolled the ball on the field. And the defenders can run anywhere they want after the ball. You've already, now those kids are experiencing positioning taught by using constraints in a game representative training where there is 0 verbal communication and there is 0 questioning. This is why the questioning method doesn't hold up to me. Now, everybody says, oh, coach, you're missing the point. And I've had this discussion with the head of the MLS. And he, I just laugh because they say, coach, you make us think, but your vision is extreme. Like you're an extremist. And I'm like, if I'm an extremist, I'm an extremist. But for me, that's what I see. And now when this slide here talks about representative game design. And I can't drive this home more for you. If there's one thing you take away from this, it's representative game design. Are you having practice sessions where the kids are able to make meaningful decisions on the ball, where they can exploit space and time to keep the ball? And when they lose the ball, are they shutting down time and space? Notice, I'm not saying that they need to have goals, goalies, any of that stuff. I'm just saying, what's a meaningful decision on the ball? And we can talk about this like, listen, US Soccer comes out with, hey, a rondo is not useful exercise. Okay. Based on who? Who? You guys? I don't know who you guys are. And I don't view anybody as Jesus in a sweatsuit. Okay. I know that you want me to pay the money to renew my licenses, but I don't understand your reasoning. And if I ask the federations where their academic theory is, they don't have an answer for me. And I have an answer for you, though. A 6v2 rondo, old school, I would argue that maybe the scanning isn't 360 degrees. So maybe it lacks in that. It lacks in counter pressing. It lacks in direction. So is there limited value into a 6v2 rondo? Okay, I'll buy the argument. But I will say this, at least it's passing and receiving with real defenders. It's not some passing pattern that means nothing. So, and when I say it means nothing, I don't mean to be this critical, but at least there's real information. Now, my definition of a rondo is not that. My definition of a rondo is, hey, look at Guardiola's 4v4 plus 4. There's 2 players in the center who are the center mids who are having to scan 360 degrees. When they lose the ball, there is counter pressing as people come in and people go out. That's an awesome exercise. You want to add direction, add goals. Like you can continue to build these things up. It's very game representative, very game representative. So that whole conversation, and I've had these conversations, at the end of the day, it fills my academic theory. Now, the one thing is, in ecological dynamics, you want to talk about training in the whole. When I say training in the whole, that's all four phases of the game: attacking organization, attacking transition, defensive organization, defensive transition. The more you can train in the whole, that's great, really good. If you isolate this game, it becomes more difficult. So if you isolate just attacking organization, it becomes more difficult because it's not the whole. And I'm not saying that you can't do it, but I'm saying be careful, because if you lose representative game design, and when I say lose it, and I'm going to come to a slide later on, but if you want to talk about isolated technical training, for me, there's really it is not representative. There's no decisions being made in isolated technical training. Is there a place for it? Here's what I'll tell you. In Brazil, with the kids who had 14,000 hours of street soccer, there's very little need for isolated technical training. Very, very little need. Kids are playing beach soccer, they're playing futsal, they're playing cage soccer. Oh my God. The skill sets that are developed by the relationship between the player and the environment, because the environments are constantly changing, no one can teach you that. But so in Japan, though, I just wrote an article on this, there's no street soccer. So they do 90 minutes of decision-making stuff that we're talking about, but the next 90 minutes is isolated technical training. They train over 3.5 hours a day. So my point to that is, it depends on your environment. And I can speak to maybe where I am, right? And I know, I'll speak to my own son. My son only plays 2 times a week. He's been in school sitting down at a desk for 8 hours straight. That kid does not want to sit in lines on cones, listening to me tell him to dribble. He wants to play the game. Adults ruin soccer for kids. They ruin it because they think they know how to teach the kids. The kids want to play. That's the number one thing. Are you having fun? And you know how they have fun? To play. That's how they have fun. They could play in a million different variations of the game, but they need to play and they need to compete. First 15 minutes of practice, they better be playing. That's just me. That's based on when I asked my son, hey, was today good? No. Why wasn't it good? We didn't play enough. Was today good? Yeah. Why? I played a lot. It's that simple. Listen to the kids. So there was a new study done recently in Germany about isolated technical training compared to small-sided games. One group only did isolated technical training. One group only did small-sided games. At the end of the 5-week period, or however long it was, both groups improved the same amount on a standard passing exercise. But the group who played small-sided games also had all those game intelligence, all those decisions on the ball, all that learning and knowledge base on manipulating time and space, where the other group didn't. They learned to play the game and they improved. See, here's the thing. Most coaches coach the way that their dad or their coach or their mom taught them. And most people were taught saying, listen, the game of soccer is far too complicated to actually learn how to pass and dribble during the game. So therefore, we must isolate the techniques of dribbling and passing and shooting and take them out of the game and teach the kids in an unrepresentative environment, because that's how we were taught. That's a falsity. That's not true. It's not true. The data is showing differently. The academic theory is completely showing the opposite. So academic theory and data are saying no. But here's the problem. If you are a coaching company who the parents are unhappy because you're not doing that passing exercise, and they're going to say that's why the team is losing, now this becomes a thing about we need to try to make both people happy because it is a customer service business. So I'm just speaking in real terms about soccer in America right now. But if it was up to me, people sometimes are resistant to change. Now, here's what I will say, though. And I always give this story about the guy from one of the African countries that won the gold medal in the Olympics in the javelin throw. I'm not doing a very good job getting through these slides, by the way, but he won the Olympic gold medal in the javelin throw without a coach. No coach. How did he learn? He turned on YouTube and he watched a guy from Scandinavia who was a really good javelin coach, and he went out and practiced. Listen, I'm sorry. Information in this day and age is at your fingertips. Any kid could go. This is why I say, people get upset with me for this. Coaches don't develop players. Players develop players. If you're not motivated to do what that guy did to win the Olympics, if you're not motivated to go watch YouTube and watch the top 10 1v1 moves on YouTube and go practice it in your driveway, well, the 90 minutes at soccer practice 2 times a week is not going to produce probably what you want. Now, this being said, though, this is a very important point, which I have to remind people all the time. Our job, like my job, oftentimes, and the job of youth soccer in America is not to produce pro players. The job is this. You have kids that might really enjoy soccer. So give them what they enjoy. They might have no ambition to do anything else outside of that local league. For me, that's fine. And that's just as important to serve that young person so you could create a soccer player, whether it's at the family picnic or whether it's in the corporate adult league after work, and a soccer fan for life. That's just as important as any high-level conversation. So we have to be mindful of all that too. Now, this is a simple slide. Like, you go to any youth practice around the country and you're going to see kids dribbling around cones. And it's just like when Bruce Lee punched the brick or whatever, and Bruce Lee's opponent punched the board and broke the board, and Bruce Lee looks at him and says, boards don't hit back. You're coupling physical actions to non-real information. A cone isn't going to come out and force you to change your intentions, to change direction, to adapt your technique. In my opinion, the value of these types of things, not only is it not very motivational, it runs out of value very, very quickly. So this is just a simple example. If this girl's going to try to tag the other girl, it's more real. She has to change her intentions. She has to change and adapt her technique. So learning technique for me is not that long a process. The long process is adapting that technique, using it in a million different ways in the situations that are ever changing. That's a lifetime of playing the real game, small-sided games, everything, right? So, you think about keeper training, like, because the reality of this is, though, and this doesn't go as much with youth sports because the kids kind of have an unlimited energy. But as you get to the higher levels, and not higher levels, but higher in age group and maybe a little higher levels, anytime that your training is completely game representative, there's a chance for injury and there's a bigger workload involved. So you can't always be 100% game representative. And goalkeepers is a position where it's never really going to be 100% representative because you send 3 goalkeepers with the goalkeeper coach, there's no team. So how do we make things more representative? So I give the example, if you're going to do a collapse dive to the right and the goalkeeper knows it, it's not real. She knows that it's going to the right. So at least can we go right or left? Then can we hit a moving ball, right? Can we make, and each time I talk about these things, it's becoming more representative game design, right? It's more. And we can continue to build that up in the goalkeeper position and with anything, to be fair. So these are some really important questions to ask about your own training sessions. Is the information game-like? Does it require players to make meaningful decisions? This is huge. Do the players need to adapt their intentions? Do the players have to find different movement solutions? Are the tasks dynamic? And is the environment competitive, and does it produce energy and real emotion? Those are massive things to ask about your own training sessions. Now, everybody does things differently. Like, this is like Belsa, and like, who am I to criticize Belsa? But there's a lot of things online with Belsa that, I don't know, like, this is a cognitive processing model. Like, he's passing through gates and all these things, which is basically probably on a low workload day. It's not very game representative. I don't love it, right? So now we go into like affordances and like, so when you are coaching, and I'm going to specify this for youth players, but this could go for anybody. So we're talking about affordances, and basically what affordances are is, what are my abilities on the ball and off the ball? And so if a guy's going to cross a ball and I don't know how to do a bicycle kick, all I know how to do is head the ball. My perceived affordance through my visual perception is to only head the ball. If I could do a bicycle kick, my perceived affordance would be head the ball, bicycle kick, whatever, because I have more options, right? Now, Messi, you cannot tell me that a coach can understand what Messi is capable of to solve problems in every part of the field. You just don't know. So as a coach, you got to say, I don't know. I don't know. Now, when you're coaching kids, a game model, how we want to play, you have to understand that if you require them to be robotic, if you're the number 6, if you're the center back or defensive center mid, every time you get the ball, I want you to switch the field over here to this player. Well, what are you actually doing? You're telling them that the game model has the answers. It has the solutions, that the coach has the solutions. When the reality is, you have to let players explore solutions. Because if they don't explore, they don't learn. I'll give you an example about the Red Bull game model. And I think it's the Red Bull game model. This is funny. So I think I was at the Philly Union one day. And I think that I was hustled out of the Philly Union very quickly for talking about how poor a game model because Philly Union uses the Red Bull kind of game model. And I just said it's a terrible game model. It's a terrible game model for youth players. And I can't help but speak the truth from my opinion based on academic theory. And here's why. If we're going to put 2 target strikers up front or one, and we're gonna keep our wingers nice and narrow, and we're simply going to look to kick the ball to our target strikers to head down in front of the 18-yard line so we can counter press and win the ball and get shots on goal. They don't care how they get the ball from their end to the other end. It doesn't matter. It's only about counter pressing, keeping the field narrow, and so forth. Now, people could say what they want, but that's the game model. It's not even the coach. That's the Red Bull energy drink game model. It's made for TV. It's made for energy. It's made to show characteristics of the energy drink. I'm sorry, like, that's my opinion. I know it could be very effective. I get it. You start having 12-year-old kids train like that, what are you doing? You are taking their visual perception and you're forcing them to perceive the game through the eyes of that game model. Their development is hindered. It's hindered. So I would caution all the grassroots coaches, do not joystick your kids through the game. Let them make their decisions. Parents, let your kids fail. Let them fail. And I don't see it as a failure. Kids have to make mistakes. They have to be caught out of position. They have to give the ball away. Remember, youth soccer is not supposed to look like Man City. It is not. The game is not supposed to look like that, and it's not going to look like that. This is a process of learning. And if your U9 teams go 0-9 and they lose by 8 goals every game, no problem. You praise effort and you praise attitude. That's what you do. And the kids got to love the game. And if you notice who gets upset in that, it's not the kids. It's the parents that get upset. This is a kids game. Don't ruin it for the kids. So, that is a little bit. I went through some of this stuff. And listen, this is Thomas Tuchel, who is also, he's one of the rare guys for me that's an academic theory guy in the pros. What does he say here? He says, we spend very few minutes and moments of training isolation in the game. He's talking about academic theory of ecological dynamics. He trains the whole. It's a big statement from him. And I noticed that he uses a lot of constraints. Newell's theory of constraints, like we can get into constraints because constraint-based training is the foundation of my methodology. Now, this is I think this is an important example to bring to coaches where we always, like I said, we want to do isolated technical, rote training. Everybody's thinking this is the way, passing patterns, this kind of stuff. And when you look at an expert surfer, the surfer doesn't sit on his surfboard and practice surfing drills on the beach. He doesn't learn nothing, right? But if the surfer is going to adjust his foot position a little bit on the board, now he's going to experiment with this different foot position. And the relationship between riding the wave and the different foot position, which would be considered constraint, is going to allow him to learn, her to learn, and self-organize. And that's how they actually learn. And that is not the separation of pieces, that is the whole. Now, this kind of stuff is a little different, but one of the biggest things I'll say is this: do not compare one domain to another. Just because somebody's an expert dancer, because they're an expert math guy, math girl, teacher, whatever it is, that the way that they got really good at that does not always transfer to how you should teach soccer. It is not that simple. This is a very dynamic game, and it's not the same as solving a problem in geometry. So my point is this: do not start planning training sessions that focus on one aspect because you think that that aspect is what one or two kids or maybe the defense needs or something. Every kid in your training session needs to pull out of that training session what they personally need. And that I feel very big on that. And you do not have to interject yourself constantly, because all you need to do, and I'll give you an example of the 4 lanes, right? I mean, the 3 lanes in the 4v4. Well, now if the ball's in a wide lane, maybe the 2 defenders have to be in the wide lane and the middle lane. So now you're actually teaching defensive compactness with those 2 players as the 4 players are in attacking organization. Great, you added another layer. You want to do something else, you want to make, divide it into thirds now. And then now, whatever, if you're going to score the goal, you have to have players only in the middle third and the attacking third. Now you have attacking support. Like, this is very simple stuff. Notice the coach is not interjecting, because the rules and the constraints of the game are teaching the kids and allowing the kids to get out of the game what they need. Now, it's funny because I get bashed all the time on Facebook and all these places about, oh, coach must not know how to coach because in the game, it's not good enough to let the game be the teacher. I'm like, listen, none of this stuff bothers me. But what I'll say is this: to be able to create these environments that are game representative, that teach the kids all these aspects about the game, is not easy to do. It's very difficult to do. You have to become a master of creating these environments to teach positioning, to teach attacking support, to teach transition. This is not me rolling a ball out saying, hey, the kids are going to get really good because I rolled the ball out and they're playing. That is not what I'm saying. I am not saying that at all. But people always think, this is the thing, especially in the business of soccer in the US. Everyone wants to say this: I developed these kids. I developed these great players. That team is great because I developed them. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. The players developed themselves. If you're a really good coach, you created excellent game representative environments for those kids to improve. But don't take the credit for that. The kids really did this along with your help. So that's really, we can go into constraints and the principles of play and stuff, but for me, the constraints, you know, the bottom line with constraints is this: is that a constraint fundamentally takes away certain options while opening up other options. And it's really important to understand that, because most people think if you give a player complete freedom, they will become better and more creative. But what often happens is this: if a kid is all left-footed and they always solve the problem with their left foot, they're going to continue to do that. You need to constrain them. You need to take that away, because when you take that away from them, they have to attune their visual perception to different information, and that leads to different physical actions and decisions. And honestly, it's that simple. But to get all these, now, the word constraint is simple. There's a million different constraints. Do you know them? Can you use them? Can you use them appropriately, age specific? And then listen, this gets harder. Like, well, so I'm a coaching provider, right? And I'll give all my coaches, here's what here's what you can do, blah, 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 blah. But what if my session's for 12 kids and only 6 show up? Can you still provide a meaningful training session? And at that point, that's where really good coaches and experienced coaches can come through. Now, I'm also not a big, by the way, if you have questions for me, coach, you just kind of, you let me know. I'm happy to.
I've definitely enjoyed listening to you, so I haven't wanted to interject into your conversation, but I'll have some questions at the end. I know you're probably coming to an end almost, so.
Yeah. So listen, this is about the study, and, this is about top soccer players in Germany. And this is no surprise, right? There's more unstructured soccer. And so I was talking to one of the guys. He was at Arsenal and he was at PSV Eindhoven as a coach. And he told me a story about where he grew up in Holland. There was 3 courts outside his house. And those courts, the lower level players played on the first, and then medium players on the second, and the best players played on the third court. And he said there's no coaches. The street decided. And when a kid got good enough, they were like, yo, come up and play on this next court. And it was handled that way. And that's awesome. And that's unstructured. And I think I have a slide in here about the proving grounds in England. And, I'm not familiar with the whatever that is, the east, the south end of London or whatever, with the proving grounds, with 14% of all current EPL players getting their start in the proving grounds, which, I would just say, the reality is that anywhere where you have futsal courts, these small-sided courts where kids are going to play 24 hours a day, these things are going to develop some really awesome players. And it's the same thing. Like if you read the talent code, if you read the book Bounce about Reading, England, and table tennis players, and it's all the same thing. But what is that? That's player motivated. It's player motivated. It's not coach centered. So, the one thing I'll wrap up with a little bit here is, if I was to get into my methodology, we have, and this is another, important part for me, possession games. Everybody wants to say possession, but a true possession game is self-organizing. I am not telling my players where to be. So let's just start with a quick, maybe it's 5v5 plus 2, right? And maybe it's in a square. Okay, well, there's no positions, right? They got to self-organize. They got to understand when they have the ball, where's the spaces that they need to fill to move this ball. That's very important, because soccer you're gonna get in these chaotic moments where you have to organize. Not everything is going to be a certainty from the training pitch. Then positional. This is the one thing that street soccer does not teach. Soccer does not teach positional play. These are things that need to be taught. For me, it's very important to teach positional exercises. That can go into a positional game model if you want to play the game like that. I'm not telling you how to play the game, but I really do think that positional exercises are fundamental, at least for soccer intelligence. And I think the more well-rounded your players could be, then they can adapt to anything as they leave your club and go on to high school or college or whatever it is. Um, I do think that you have to, and most clubs have field issues where they don't always get a chance to play against another team. You know, if it's 9v9 or 7v7, you don't always get a chance to play on the same field with the real distances against another team. So these phase of play, like real games, 7v7, real distance, this is how we press, this is how we work the ball out of the back. We do this. We make sure that our teams do this for at least 30 minutes once a week, because that's very important as well. So they do possession exercises, positional exercises, they'll do phase of play. Everything has constraints built into it, including my, phase of play stuff. We didn't touch on differential learning. That's kind of an expansion of the constraint-based stuff. And then we do have stuff which is overload training, which is something that we can get into another presentation, but all those things fall into what my methodology is.
Thank you, Marcus. That was very good. And I do have some questions for you because I was writing lots of stuff down as you were speaking. I'm going to start with your knowledge base to achievement to the laws, right? Control laws. You had that at the beginning. So if someone wanted to take this methodology at a low level, as a grassroots level, what would your advice be on how to start by developing this methodology into their practice?
Representative game design.
Yep.
Does it look like soccer? Are they exploiting space and time? Are they closing down space and time? That, for me, and that means opposed. That means they, opposed. It's not unopposed. This is opposed stuff. So that's where I would start. That is the fundamental start. Listen, here's what I'll say. Even with my college team and with the youth clubs, to be honest, from the second you step on the field, you're making decisions. We don't do anything else but make meaningful decisions. Now, and I'll give you an example. Like my college team, the kids are maybe 18 years old to 23 years old. Your body's not prepared to go into a 4v4+4 rondo where you're killing it and counter pressing, right? But maybe we do 5x5 grid, 4v1, one touch, and another grid attached to that with another guy who's a transition guy. So now they're only moving 2 feet, maybe 1 foot in either direction, playing one touch. After 3 passes, they could transition, and the transition is only about 3 feet. Now they're making real decisions on the ball, one touch, bing, 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 as their bodies are starting to warm up. Right? And then we'll work from there. We'll go to the next step and the next step, but it's decisions. Very, very rarely will I have anything that is not decision making. Can we do a passing pattern to warm up the body? Yes, we can. It's not a problem. Now, I can talk to you about passing patterns and rhythm and why these things maybe could be useful, but it is not a staple in my methodology.
So you also said about, allowing the players develop players, right? And I quite like that as a quote personally, and something that I'll take away today. But if we don't, as coaches, right, and as we see in courses, if we don't coach the game, it looks like we can't coach. We have, as you kind of alluded to in your presentation, we have to be active, looking like we're coaching a game or we're coaching something, because otherwise it makes us look incompetent. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on that again, if you could.
So what I would say is you're 100% right. And but let me tell you something. When you set up these environments, and you could see the kids moving the ball and you could see them get into these attacking organization form. That's pretty awesome.
Mm.
And anybody who knows anything is going to be like, wow, this is much different. And when the kids go home and their parents ask them, they're going to say, that was really, I had fun today, mom. And that's
Yeah.
what matters. Now, here's what I'll say though about the coaching part. If during these exercises, I'm not going to stop it, but I might say, hey, Bobby, can you open your hips a little bit? Bobby, can you drop another 2 yards for me here when he has the ball so he has a better angle to pass to you? Great. I can do that while they're playing.
Mm.
And for me, that's all I need to do. These soft coaching points, I'm always making these. Now, in the phase of play trainings that I do for 30 minutes, this is how we press. But I am coaching. The kids are learning in that. But I'm not taking a lot of time. I'm not there to bore young kids at all. And this is funny though. So with my college team, you would be really surprised about our preparation. Listen, I don't care who we're playing. This is about my team. This is about the way we play.
Mm.
Now, yes, we'll go over the other team, like this is how the other team plays, but I'm not getting into any detail. I'm going to say, okay, it looks like they play a 4-3-3. They're going to press with three. The next three are behind them. Blah, blah, blah. This is the tendencies in attack. Watch out for this player and this player. That's it. My scouting reports could last 2.5 minutes. That's it. Because my players make their own decisions nonstop. And who's to say that team isn't going to change the way they press when they come out and play against us? Because honestly, we're the best team in the country. People are always trying to catch us off guard and they're super, hyped to play us. I'm not worried about them. My players face everything. We're constantly using variability in training. This is a game where they must have the confidence to adjust for themselves. Listen, it's funny. So I was speaking to one coach who whatever, like at this one program who's really done well through the years. And he would say, listen, whenever my team is on my side of the field where I am, they do really well. When they have to play on the other side of the field, they can't hear me shout instructions and we always end up losing. And I'm saying to myself, wow, I don't want my team like that. My guys don't need to listen to me too much. Like if I see an adjustment that needs to be made, I'll make the adjustment. But I am not screaming in this type of stuff. So
we have coaches like that, right? When you're staying on your side of the sideline and your team is defending in your half as such, and then they get worried when the team goes to the other half. They're like, oh, now I can't tell the defenders what to do. I can't, they can't hear me. It's exactly the
and
same
they
thing.
start to rely on this stuff though. The kids, in youth soccer, the kids become relying on the coach. If you're a joystick coach, you can't have that happen. You got to have the kids comfortable to make their own decisions without you yelling and screaming and telling them what to do. That really can't happen. I remember the Florida State coach from the women's side who had left. He had great success, and he said he kept his film sessions to 5 moments, 5 like 20-second clips. Here's 5 things that this team did. Take a look at them. Because my thing is this, and I feel this way about video a lot. Video is taken from a bird's eye perspective. That does not relate at all to a player's vision on the field. It means nothing. And I do think certain things, I call it solution creation, right? There's a certain level of knowledge base that you'll get from watching pro games and from watching video. But again, you are not drawing on past memories and saying, wait a second, in this video clip, now I'm excluding set pieces from this, obviously, but there's not a lot. I really value, I value rest. Like when we go to a national tournament, we have to win 4 high-level games in 7 days. My thing is, as soon as the game is done, I do not want to have team meetings. I do not want to talk about soccer, and neither should you guys. You guys should play video games and hang out with your friends and
Mm.
not waste any energy, because there's a lot of energy you have to expand in those 90 minutes. And I don't want you thinking about it. And our team meetings are 2 or 3 minutes on tactics, and
Mm.
that's it. And honestly, I really, but listen, for those 90 minutes, we are giving everything. And they know that your will to compete has to be at the highest level if you're going to play for us. We accept nothing less. And and but we don't talk about it that much. And we understand the value of rest.
I'm gonna go to the shared affordances bit because I quite like that. How would you build relationships on the field so that this, so for example, I have an example on my side. So we have a high school team right now that I have two outside backs. I have one that loves to play the ball on the same side down the line to our outside midfielder. And then we have one that likes to do a 50-yard switch every time he gets the ball. So we have two different people that do two different things. And I'm kind of saying to my other players, I'm like, look, we need to start reading what this player is probably going to do, because it's going to help us obviously then make a decision in the game to then get the, get the edge on the opposition. But how can we start to facilitate our own players reading what their intentions are? Because that's, you want to put those two things together, right? You want
Yeah.
to put.
So yes, I listen. I like what you're saying. I understand that. So like I had two Brazilian left backs over the years who always cut the ball inside and started
Mm.
to drive inside off the dribble, right? And one of the things that I mentioned to them is, if I'm playing against you, you're going to get me maybe the first two times. But
Mm.
after that, I'm going to start to pick up on what your intentions are.
Right.
So you need to think about this yourself, of
Mm.
how you the ball, your first touch, and you need to start to think a little bit differently, because it's people are going to smarten up to this.
Mm.
Now, at the same time, at the same time, in my trainings, I'm rotating a lot of guys. So my left back is going to play left wing. He's going to play striker. He's going to play center mid in
Mm.
training exercises. So this kind of brings me into a larger conversation about the MLS final from a couple years ago about Columbus Crew in Seattle. And they give up 2 goals. Seattle gives up 2 goals, I believe, to Columbus on back post. And if this was a normal training session and normal game and not the MLS final, then that coming Monday, the coach would say, we're doing defensive shape, and we're going to do the same boring practice that we did all year, which is our defensive session of the week: shift left, step, drop, blah, blah, blah. And I'm saying, okay, whatever. But the reality was that the center back didn't scan. He didn't see that there was a free man at the back post. The right back never really played too much right back. He was a player who was playing out of position. So, what are the things you could do outside of the norm that we've been taught of how to coach soccer? And for me, visually, that center backs were attuned. Boom, vision was only where the ball was. So
Mm.
I would start to play those center backs as center mids in some training games to try to increase scanning frequency, right?
Mm.
I would even stick him as a right back. I would take that right back and stick him as a center back to feel what it's like to be responsible for that guy over his
Mm.
shoulder. Maybe every time on transition, I would make that right back stay for 5 seconds or 3 seconds before he could recover, to make him feel it extra. You didn't recover. I want you to feel it more. And I want those other guys to feel it more. Maybe
Mm.
I would make defense have to over rotate to a line that I put in the center to feel the pain and how of leaving that back post not covered. Like, those are things to change visual perception, other than, hey, shift left, shift right, right? It's just different
Right.
ways to think about these things. So, but let's be honest, habits are not easy. There's not often an easy fix to break a habit, right?
No, right.
As these things are soccer, I view soccer as a whole. So as your kids are playing self-organizing possession games, they're playing with constraints, they're playing positional games, can they start to develop different skill sets? If you wanted to constrain them from stopping to do the things that they normally did, hey, you have to play in this outside lane. You're not allowed. This is actually an interesting one. You're not allowed to play any straightforward balls. No straightforward balls. Every ball that goes forward has to be played on an angle, and you have to play two touch. If you play back, it has to be one touch. It completely changes the perception. It completely changes positioning. And those things, this is what I'm saying. If you just do, like for me, I said verbal, but like, hey, you start to talk to him, it's fine to talk to him. But by giving him those constraints, now they're living it. Now they're feeling it, and they can't play the same way they played.
Right. So, so in terms of them teaching, them learning, sorry, and you teaching, the mental stimulus is the most important thing, right? Is actually them being in the situation rather than being told what the
Yeah.
situation is.
And
Yeah.
then the constraints are forcing them to attune and to perceive different things, and they're going to have to couple their physical actions to solutions that they would have never had to look at before. So you're forcing them to explore different things. And that,
Yeah.
for me, that's massively important. And that connects straight back to academic theory.
I do have one general last question before I do some quick
Yep.
fire questions that we usually finish with. I was I was writing this down as you were speaking quite early on, and I'm gonna say how I wrote it on the paper. What would a Marcus DiBernardo session look like? And I circled it and put a question mark next to it, and I just wanted to
Yeah.
see what a general session of yours might look like with these things.
So,
Obviously, it's
like,
really dependent on age and stuff. I understand, but I'm just trying to get a general feel.
yeah. So for me, like, I actually have a color coded system with my college where, like, a blue day, which I have a couple blue days, does not have to be game model. Plenty of decisions on the ball, huge amount of constraints, right? And when I come to practice, I'm going to spend 10 minutes on this, 15 minutes on the next. We're going to go from small to medium to large. Then we're going to finish on goals with goalkeepers. I honestly don't give a crap about any of that. For me, I'm in that current feedback loop along with the players. If I suddenly want to expand and I say, oh man, listen, I'm going to change this, and we're going to go another 25 minutes in this because the kids are getting a lot out of it and this is awesome. Let's keep going.
Right.
Forget the rest of my lesson plan that day. Forget it.
Mm.
That's how I run it. Now, the red days is tactically, how are we going to play on Saturday against this team? That's pretty simple. And we do that. And that's we'll have a differential learning day where we're I have some differential learning videos on there where we're using half a rugby ball and we're playing rondos and possession and position. Here's what I'll say: like, all my constraints and all my differential learning, which we didn't even get into, are still done in very game representative environments. So they're still coupling their physical actions while adjusting to these crazy situations, but it's real. So that's my thing. I'm not a beginning coach is going to have an outline of exactly what they want to do. I kind of think that for me at this point where in my career, I'm free to go any direction I want based upon what's happening in front of me at practice.
Yeah, and I think that's where I'd like to be. Obviously, when I was younger, 16, 17, starting out, I would have a very specific schedule on practice. And then now I think it's starting to loosen off a little bit just because I kind of know what I'm teaching and don't have to write everything down all the time. And hopefully I'd like to get to that stage one day for sure.
It's funny because I was at, I heard this one guy say, listen, I have to cover this week 1, and he had it written down. All 12 weeks in the youth club, he knew this, and this. And I said, and I said to him, yeah, that's not how I do it. He's like, what do you mean? Like, how could you not do this? This covers the whole game of soccer. And I'm like, every single thing needs to be the whole. I'm
Mm,
not separating 12 different topics. Everything needs to be the whole, in my opinion. And we already went
mm,
over kind of what the whole is, because I don't want to overcomplicate these things. The game is about exploiting space and time and shutting
mm,
down space and time. So I actually find most of the coaching license stuff way, way overdone for me and overcomplicated. And I think things can, and when I say overcomplicated, actually, when it comes to the constraints, again, you have to be really smart to have a methodology that's a constraint-based methodology. It's not easy to do, but I find a lot of this stuff to be broken down into these things that for me it doesn't connect and it doesn't make sense for me. So
right.
that's just, and that's not hating on anybody or
No,
anything,
no,
but
no. Right.
it's frustrating a little bit for me to see this when it doesn't make sense. And then that's, and essentially, let's be honest, coaches need to now pay and abide by the rules and show the competency in the licensing program the way they tell you to coach in order
Mm,
to be afforded opportunities to continue to coach up through the ranks all the way to the professional level. And I don't understand, in a day and age where you can get a PhD online, why you would possibly have to pay and travel the country for years to learn how to coach when this is a game of opinions.
right. I'm going to wrap up with the quick 5 questions that we always ask at the end. So the first one is, what 3 pieces of advice would you give a brand new coach starting out?
So again, two things. One is resources available online,
Mm,
right? There's a ton of good resources available online. But what you don't want to do is be a guy who's like, grab this, grab this, grab this. You really have to look for resources that are going to kind of give you a general methodology. See, there's so much information online now.
mm,
For a beginning coach, like, you got to pick somebody that you really want to follow and follow their way. And and if you could find somebody like that, that's a really, really good thing. Like,
mm,
I'll give you an example. Like Barcelona, the technical director, I forgot his name, but he has, I want to say it's called like CR14 or C14 or something. It's a very worthwhile resource. It's a subscription based one too. It, Listen, that's cool because it's all the Barcelona method. I actually don't subscribe to. I used a lot of things from that. Right, I drew a lot of things. I
mm,
would never train the Barcelona way because there's so much more for me that I
mm.
find value in. But I really enjoyed studying that, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
helped me with a lot of the positional games that I do. And you know, I got to sit down with Guardiola's assistant coach before, and he's helped me with some really great insights. And so that's my thing. Like,
Mm,
but the problem is, if you get and you're starting to follow some of these things that honestly don't make too much sense, they might look good, they might look like, hey, wow, this, they're dribbling between 47 cones. And if you're a new coach, you might think that looks cool and it has real value, but you got to pick the people who hopefully you pick somebody good to follow. The next piece, for me, is a really good mentor, if that's possible, where you're coaching. And if you have somebody who's a really good coach and has done things great at your club, that is great. And the third piece is, constantly, like John Wooden would do his exercises, do his drills, whatever you want, and he would write down on a note card what worked well, what didn't work well, and how to improve it for the next time. And he kept all those note cards. So the next time he did that exercise, he had those notes on what did, how it worked. And I think that that is something that is important as well, to constantly reflect on what was the outcome and how do I make it better.
How should a coach step out of their comfort zone?
So for me, I don't think that you should imitate anybody. You need to be
Mm,
you. But the one thing I'll say is this, especially for new coaches, you have to separate your ego from your position, and
mm,
you have to separate winning from your ego, because all that stuff is nonsense. The winning, the losing, don't worry about any of that. Just what and I keep this stuff very, very simple. So what do I want to be defined as? I want my players to compete. I want them to be good people and respectful people to the referee, to me, to the other team. And those things are non-negotiables with me. You need to
mm,
be ready for practice. You need to be concentrated. It's that simple. And for me, once kids see the value of hard work and everybody's working hard, they buy into that. And I think that's the important part. Don't worry about winning and losing. That's all nonsense for me. Because if you continue to do the right things, and the right things are just, forming good habits and good relationships and caring about each other, eventually you're going to win some games. And if the kids put in extra work outside of practice, they're going to start to win a lot of games. And all
mm.
that stuff is cool. But when you win games, you also have to be a good winner. You have to understand that it's not easy to lose. And even at the college level, listen, I'm the first guy, and I tell my kids, like, listen, we win a big game. You need to go over and shake those kids' hands who are laying on the ground and pat them on the back, because that's going to be us. Because Alex Ferguson just, the only thing that's guaranteed in soccer is eventual disappointment. So you might be a champion one day, but the next day you're runner up. And you have to do that in such a way that honors yourself, your community, and the game. Because it's the people who can't separate that, and you see this on the youth level, especially from coaches and even parents. And it kind of it kind of it takes me by surprise each time I see it. And for me, I'm a guy who likes to um, be an energetic guy, but you have to be careful with energy that it's not taken in the wrong way and instigates,
Right.
people and spectators to get a little out of control. So there's fine lines here, and I often think that the world of youth soccer is, when you talk about teaching, you have to teach how to be a competitor. Just because
Mm.
somebody shouldered you off the ball doesn't mean that he wants to fight you. Like, that's not what this is. You need to act, and but those are things that coaches are responsible for teaching. They're responsible for sportsmanship. They're responsible for this. And listen, there could be a parent yelling and screaming to their kid to do the opposite, and eventually you're going to have to tell that parent, listen, that's not the way I view the game. That's not the way I teach the game. So, blah blah blah. But I always do that in a very, very calm manner.
Yeah, there's a lot of good points in there, and I think this is why we, as Evolve, come to the surface, because we want to try to change some of those things that you're talking about. Like educate parents, being able to educate coaches on, hey, actually the development of players is so much more important than you winning something. So we're trying to get into that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, listen, self-esteem and self-worth is massive. And anytime, if a kid plays the piano, if he plays soccer, if they do,
Mm.
these are all about kids learning to acquire skills. And who cares if they ever become the best at it? But that gives them confidence to be good in school, and they can do these math problems, and they can get a job and be competent. And this is the larger picture. And this is why all the other stuff, to me, it doesn't matter that much.
And the last one I have for you is, what is the best way to continually develop?
I mean, it's hard. Like you're saying, as a coach.
Yes.
Mm, I
So
mean,
what aspect do you think kind of develops coaches the
yeah.
most, if there is?
So you always have to ask questions, right? And you always have to question your own methods, and you have to, like, I'm always like, just to give you an example, like, I thought the best college soccer coach in the country this year, tactically,
Mm,
was this guy from a junior college in Kansas named Colley Community College. And I'm going to have a Zoom call with him in another week or two,
yeah.
and to go over how he tactically approached the game, because I want to
Mm,
learn from him because he did such
right.
a nice job. My ego is not big. I'm happy to learn from anybody. So I'm always inquisitive and asking people to share information with me. I do think that one of the things with me is I am never, just because somebody tells me that this is the way, it doesn't mean it's true for me. And it doesn't
Mm,
mean I need to accept that. And that's not me being a pain in the, pain in the butt. That's me just saying this is a subjective game. Even with me linking academic theory to training session design to my own two principles of play, or the way I look at principles of play, it doesn't mean I'm right, but please do not push things on me if there's no academic theory, if there's no data, if there's no understanding of principles of play. Like, I don't know, like, it's hard for me. I want to listen as long as that there's, but I'm never going to say my way is the way.
well, I'm going to finish on that because I think, I, I I don't expect that if anybody presents something that somebody is going to believe that person 100%. I've taken some really good stuff from you, and some of it I might not agree with, but some of it I do agree with. And then I can kind of, and we always say about coaches being the best seeds, right? So we kind of take something
Yeah.
from somebody, and we take something from somebody else, and then we just created our own kind of create our own coaching practice. So I just want to say thank you to you because I think that was thought provoking, and I thought that anyone that gets the opportunity to listen to this will think so too. So I just want to say thank you to you.
No worries.
Thanks for
Listen,
coming on.
you
Thanks for
have
giving
it,
me your time.
yeah, listen, anything, if you ever need anything, let me know. Happy to do another one in the future.
I'm sure that we would, and if anyone wants to contact you, what's the best way to do that? If anyone wants to
The
reach
best
out to
thing
you.
is just to send me an email at coachdibernardo@gmail.com. And, I get back to everybody.
We go back to me, so that's good.
No,
But no, but no, I
no,
appreciate it
no,
so much. Thank you. And to contact us at Evolve, our website is www.evolvethecoach.com. Please feel free to reach out to us there. But thank you, Marcus. Thanks for your time.
no problem.